So, a very good morning to you all, and welcome to the Resilient Lincolnshire Business Beyond the Curve. So, this event is streaming live and it's simultaneous across our Facebook pages, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel. So, please do keep your comments and questions coming through, as we'll get an opportunity to pick up on some of these throughout the discussion today. My name's Tarzan Shoker, and I'm the marketing manager for the Lincoln International Business School, and I'll be your host for this event. So the spotlight this week is on sustainability, and today's webinar follows on from yesterday's executive education webinar on sort of measuring sustainability, which if you happen to miss it, then you can actually catch up on this on our sort of Resilient Lincolnshire webpage or either our YouTube channel or our Facebook page there. So today we're hosting episode 15 of the series, Business Beyond the Curve, and this actually forms an integral part of our Resilient Lincolnshire, which was actually conceptualized in partnership with the Centre for Resilience. So those that have been following us will know that the series is about creating and continuing a dialogue and a connect between the university and industry stakeholders who've been facing this current challenge that we're all in together at the moment. So this series basically explores the curve that business has been on, and what that may look like in the future. And sustainability affects us all, whether it's individuals or as organisations. Hence, we wanted to sort of highlight it to reflect its importance by having our Sustainability Week. And what better platform to bring this together on with the university and the Lincolnshire businesses to be able to hold these conversations and to give a voice to these sort of matters there. So we've got another great panel for you this morning, but first of all, let me introduce Dr. Claire May. So Dr. Claire May is Associate Professor in Marketing and a lead on Principles for Responsible Management at the Lincoln International Business School. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Tarzan. Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Sorry, I can hear a bit of echo. Yes, good morning. So as Tarzan said, my name is Claire May. I'm an Associate Professor in Marketing, specialising in sustainability at Lincoln International Business School. So thank you for joining us. Those who are with us live, thank you for tuning in if you're accessing this recording at a later stage. So as Tarzan said, this week is Sustainability Week in the Resilient Lincolnshire Business Beyond the Curve series. And today's webinar is titled The Green Recovery and Your Business. So I'm joined this morning by 4 panelists. I'm going to introduce those to you in a second. But first of all, just to let you know what we're going to be discussing. So essentially what we want to do this morning is think about motivations for integrating sustainability principles into business practice, some of the challenges of doing this, some of the opportunities that businesses have. So our panel are going to talk about examples of where businesses have integrated sustainability into their business in order to become more efficient, more profitable, and more future-proof. So let me introduce our panel. We have 2 local business owners and we have 2 experts. So first of all, Alexa. Good morning, Alexa.
Morning.
Morning. So Alexa Mottram is a senior lecturer in product design here at the University of Lincoln, and she is also the founder of Motties, which is an ethical footwear brand specialising in the use of reclaimed materials and repair. Good morning, Alexa. So secondly, Richard. Good morning, Richard Jones. So Richard is the owner and the director of Emilio Solar Energy. This is a company that specialises in professional solar PV design and installation, as well as being the MD of EV Camel, which specialises in advising on EV charging strategy and installation of charge points for businesses and in the home. Richard has over 30 years of experience working in the renewable energy and construction sectors. Hi, Richard. Okay, my third panelist is Katrina Pierce. Morning, Katrina. So Katrina is the development manager for the Federation of Small Businesses, who support the self-employed and independent businesses across Lincolnshire with guidance, advice, events, opportunities and lobbying. Katrina is also a communications and PR specialist. So she used to be Katrina is the former head of communications at IEMA and brings over 12 years experience of sustainability communications and engaging professionals for public and businesses of all sizes in embedding the 3 pillars of sustainability. Welcome to Katrina. And finally, I'd like to introduce Meryl Shirley. Morning, Meryl.
Morning, everyone.
So Meryl runs a business consultancy called the Good Business Network, and this connects ethical consumers with businesses and provides a voice for businesses to promote how they have adopted sustainable business practices to consumers who want to shop ethically or in considering the business impact on both people and the planet in their shopping habits. Meryl also advises on building effective, socially responsible business strategies that maximise value for business and its stakeholders. So thank you all for joining us this morning. So we're going to start off just by setting a little bit of context for today's discussion. So Katrina, I'm going to come to you first of all, if that's all right, just to set some context about what we mean by sustainability principles. And those 3 pillars of sustainability that I mentioned as I introduced you.
Absolutely. So let's start broad. I'm going to give you quite a reductive assessment of what sustainability is in the context we're discussing today. So very essentially, it's meeting the needs of today without compromising the needs of future generations or our own tomorrow, essentially. So those 3 pillars of sustainability, they are environment, the natural environment or the world we live in, the economy and society. Now, what we've seen really, and that this is forever true, that it's very difficult to balance those 3 pillars, but we absolutely need those 3 to be independently and equally strong. But what we've seen with the recent pandemic has brought this into sharp focus, how you see a dip or a decline in any one of those elements and you get serious issues. So we've had a social issue, we've had the global pandemic, a health issue that has plummeted the economy. So you've seen some imbalance in one that's caused a crash in the other, but then at the same time we've seen real environmental results at the same time. Air quality has vastly improved with the reduced travel. So you can see from that very reductive example how balancing those 3 principles across business, across society, across governance is a really, really tricky balance, but we all play our part in doing that. Now we're going to be hearing an awful lot in government's plans for what is now being called green recovery. So what does that mean? So essentially, it's using this opportunity where the economy and society has almost had to come to a bit of a standstill to reset how we build back, how we recover, how does business recover, how does society recover, and how does the environment recover in a sustainable fashion. So you're going to hear an awful lot about sustainable development, sustainable infrastructure, digital solutions, economic solutions, increased digital connectivity to enable people to work differently. We're looking at reduced travel or resilience measures embedded in almost everything we do. So the phrase you're going to be hearing from government for quite a long time is the phrase is build back better. So that's essentially using this opportunity where we've had a bit of an economic standstill to recover in a sustainable way for the long term.
Thanks, Katrina. That's really helpful to give us an overview there and just set that context for us. So let's think now, if we could just come to Alexa and Richard, you are business owners. Could you tell us, just as we start this conversation then, a little bit about how sustainability is built into your business? Alexa, perhaps we could start with you first of all.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. So my business is a footwear business. So I manufacture footwear in Lincoln, and the way that sustainability is incorporated into that process is all around the use of materials. So I do that in 2 ways. Firstly, the materials I use are all reclaimed, so they're mostly offcuts from the upholstery industry, so things like leather and wool that would otherwise end up in landfill. I rescue those from the waste stream and produce footwear with them. And the other way that I make sure that that material has the longest life it possibly can is through designing my products for repair and offering repair services as part of my business model. Yeah, that's what is really.
That sounds fascinating. Richard, what about your businesses?
Sure. Well, I think it's fairly obvious that sustainability is a vital part of what we do, helping homeowners and businesses with both installation of solar panels and electric car charging points is obviously a key part of the overall sustainability agenda in decarbonising the electricity and so forth that we use. But it's also about living what we preach as well, and we are taking the steps of moving to an electric fleet in terms of our cars and vans over time. Many of us in the business have got solar panels on our own homes, and we operate a fairly paperless office really. But I think actually the key thing that runs through our business is something that's really important, and that is that this is such a fast-moving world in terms of the things that are possible in terms of sustainability. And actually staying on top of these and what the latest developments are, both in terms of the technology, but actually I think more in terms of the application of some of that technology is really important, so that we can advise people on what the best and most sustainable solutions are to help businesses reduce the amount of electricity they use, reduce the amount of petrol or diesel that they buy. And it's that's really important, really, I suppose. And it's important, I think, to have a picture just outside of your own business of the whole thing. And part of what we do, and part of what I'll come back to a little bit later on in this discussion, is I personally take the lead for the Chamber of Commerce on these kind of issues. But as part of that, I sit on the Lincoln Climate Commission. And I think over the coming years, we're going to see the Climate Commission being a key part of the support that's available to businesses to help people to address our climate emergency. And I think very often it's those practical steps that businesses that I talk to need some help with, to know what they can do to help make their businesses more sustainable.
Thank you, Richard. So I'd like to just pick up on one of the things that you mentioned there. I think what will be a really useful part of this discussion to draw out later on will be some of those practical things that you were mentioning, sources of support and so on, so we're going to draw on that later. First of all, one of the things that was really apparent in your answer there was just how important this is to your organisation, and clearly you're both very passionate about this. So could you talk to us a little bit about why sustainability is important to you and your business, but also to your wider stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I mean, I think it's something that I see in the younger generation, really. I've got teenagers myself, and I recently presented at a secondary school. And it's really clear that many young people are really concerned about the climate emergency and what the future holds for them in the next 50 years. And I started off that presentation to those teenagers by apologising for our generation in the mess that we've made of the climate. And I think that whole experience made it come home to me the responsibility that we have to do something about this climate emergency. And that's really why I see it as being so important. It really struck me that the scientists are telling us we need to do something within the next 10 years to make a real difference. And the thing that struck me was that those 14 and 15-year-olds that I was talking to, by the time they leave school and get a degree or their professional qualifications, it will be too late for them to do something about this. And that's why I'm so passionate about this agenda, that the responsibility is with us. The responsibility is with us to educate ourselves and to look at the practical things that we need to do to address this whole agenda. Alexa, would you like to?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'd really echo what you said. I feel a sense of responsibility as well, and I think have since being quite young really, and being a bit scared about environmental impacts of consumerism, etc. I think for me, I grew up making things and being creative, and I realized that's what I'm good at. I'm a maker, but combining that with my concern for sustainability felt like a bit of a juxtaposition. So I really wanted to find a way that I could make things without being part of the worst side of consumerism. So that's what's driven me in Motties, I think. And for the customers, I think there's a lot of disillusionment around consumer culture. I think we're moving away from that, and I hear from my customers anyway that they are looking for products that are not mass produced. They want a connection with the maker. They want to know that all the people involved in that production chain get a fair wage, are living well and being treated fairly. So actually, it surprised me, but I think more so than the sort of material and environmental impacts of the product, that human connection has been what's spoken to people most strongly.
Thank you. So just picking up on some of those ideas then, we've heard from business owners there. So Meryl and Katrina, if I could just come to you now and just ask, in the businesses that you work with, do you think that they're sharing similar views to what Alexa and Richard have shared? And also, why do you think that businesses are motivated to become more sustainable in their practice?
Are you okay if I go first, Katrina? Just aware there's a slight delay, and apologies for that. But the businesses I speak to have identified, firstly, it's a passion. It's something that they know, like Alexa has spoken clearly about. They need to do the right thing because it motivates them. For other businesses, it's because it's good business sense. Sustainability is the fear was at the beginning of the pandemic that the current push into sustainable business was going to be stopped by the pandemic. But if anything, it's the opposite, because the pandemic has revealed weaknesses in supply chains, and a lot of smaller businesses and energy supplying businesses are really aware of that they need to improve things based on what's happened. Then again, you've got consumer pressure, and all the stories about how people are treated in sweatshops pushed the drive into shopping ethically. Particularly amongst people who've got middle classes, people with a bit more disposable income. However, other businesses, just like pubs, are noticing that introducing paper straws has just made a massive difference in the comments I get across the bar. People are saying, I really like these straws coming in. And I spoke to a local pub who is part of a network who said it's just been really easy for us to switch to more sustainable options under consumer pressure, and then they incorporate it as part of their strategy of saying that they're an ethical, good business. But you see that the market share of this is growing, so it's actually really good business sense for people to do this. And some people have found that they need to build in their values into recognizing that their businesses are not just the success is not just measurable based on profit, but it's to do with how employees feel about the business. Bigger businesses like bar chains, they are giving out bonuses to individual branches that are saving more. They measure their waste disposal. They look at customer feedback. I'm sorry, we're going to come on to talking about measuring impact later on, so I'm jumping the gun a bit. But all those things, people are recognizing that this is actually a really, if you want your business to survive after COVID in this new stage of green recovery, you're going to have to do more to prove your eco credentials to shine above the other businesses. So.
Thank you. Katrina, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, sure. So I work with and represent around 3,000 small businesses and self-employed across Lincolnshire, and I see a real range of views and a real sort of in the maturity of where some businesses are in their sort of journey towards sustainability. You see a real mix. Now, where they are on that scale very much seems to depend on the nature of their business. So if they are a business like Alexa or Richards, where sustainability or sustainability products are core to what they do, obviously they're a little bit further along that line, and their motivations and their commitment look a little different. For much smaller businesses, and if you are a florist or a coffee shop or a sandwich shop, they're a little different on that journey, but I think they are really starting to be aware of their place in the world and where they are in a global supply chain. So if you're a florist in Spalding, you know, you could be either getting your tulips from down the road or from Holland or from Kenya. So it's I think the businesses in Lincolnshire are far more switched on than they would perhaps be given credit for. But having said that, there is a real mixed bag on as to where they are on that journey and why they're there. I think in the last year we've seen a real push for businesses to be on that journey towards sustainability, less because of their impact on the environment. I think maybe 5-10 years ago that's very much where business was. It was minimizing that business's impact on the environment. I would argue that has really changed, particularly in the last year. It's now far more around the environment's impact on you and your business and your premises. So you think in the last year alone in Lincolnshire, we had horrendous flooding from as far apart as Wainfleet to Rugby in the county. That put lots of businesses out of action for months on end, lots of people out of their homes as well. Let's not forget that. So I think a lot of the action we're now seeing is more about resilience, helping their premises and their staff to work in a resilient fashion. So you see a real mix across the county, and some of the motivations are quite different, but yeah, there are some exciting things happening in the county for sure.
That's really encouraging, and actually really interesting as we reflect on the variety of different motivations, but actually as you pointed out, Katrina, that businesses are on different stages of this journey, and as I said, we're going to come in the last kind of section of our webinar today to talk about some practical ideas and help for businesses who are on different stages of that journey. Quick question, first of all, as we're sort of wrapping up this part of the webinar, thinking about kind of motivations and why this is important. As we've talked several times now about the pandemic, and actually in the wake of the global pandemic, many businesses are just struggling to survive, and this may therefore be towards the bottom of the list. How do you capture the value of sustainability measures? Meryl, can I come to you for that one?
Well, going back to Alex's point, I think the reality is that if they don't adapt, they won't survive. A very good point was made that, for example, if you're thinking short term about your survival, and you're making, for example, car parts because of all the agenda around sustainable targets for 2030 and 2050, fuel and diesel cars won't be around in 12 years' time. So and some of the pressures around environmental changes are going to speed up. So you need to adapt your business now, because the parts you're making won't be wanted. So your business won't be sustainable. Your business won't survive because you're not selling a product people want anymore. So in terms of thinking through, there's a bit of if you want to survive, you kind of do have to embrace this a little bit more. And in terms of managing impact, there are, I would say, a really good way of managing your impact is there are lots of online toolkits you can use. There are kind of consumer groups who have them. Surfers Against Sewage has a really good impact assessment toolkit you can use to look at how your business is impacting the environment. And in terms of the other sustainable development goals, in terms of thinking about how you can present your ethical credentials in your business, and people, I think consumers are getting more aware that actually it's not making money is not bad. We need shops on the high street to buy things from. We need our suppliers from every size of business to survive. There are lots of impact measurement businesses out there, lots of ways of engaging with consumers to get feedback. That's a very good way of measuring, a very simple and good way of measuring the impact of the changes you're making, but also gives you an opportunity to communicate that you're caring about taking these steps. And so again, I mentioned Surfers Against Sewage. They really are pushing plastic free, and people have really bought into plastic free, trying to avoid the use of plastic. And it's often the thing, and the pressure groups are really changing the shopping habits of consumers. Thinking about, there are other ways of measuring your impact of things like, in a recent study I found preparing for this, there was flight shame and eco-anxiety. Richard mentioned going to the school, but actually on an international level, eco-anxiety is really high, and the pandemic has made people stop and look at the world differently in terms of hearing birdsong and thinking about the habits they're going to change. And I think a really simple way of measuring your impact is just to start conversations going and see what people say to you about your business, and maybe getting in a small group with other business leaders, as some of the people in my network have done, where we do like a 360-degree appraisal of businesses, where we say, I think you might be able to do that differently or better. A shop in, so I'm based in Lincoln, Clearview Opticians in Lincoln sells repurposed, recycled plastic glasses frames. So ways of measuring success can be very simple around the products that you sell. Are people engaging with them, and how to get people to engage with them more? So to suggest certain eco products and measure how successful you are in terms of sales. So those are off the top of my head really about things like that. So.
Thank you. Before we move on, is there anything that anybody else would like to add on that in terms of the value of sustainability measures?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, Claire, just really to say that yes, there is some merit in capturing the value of sustainability measures, but really following on from some things Meryl was saying, that I think that sometimes just doing things differently is important as well. The kind of the whole move towards localism and doing things locally, but also I think to say that there's also a cost of not doing something that's very important. Yeah. You think, well, the pandemic had a big impact on our lives. Well, if you think that's had a big impact on our lives, climate change, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, kind of thing. It's that kind of thing. By the time we get into migration being forced by climate change and all of those kind of global impacts that would have a big impact on us in the UK, really. So very much agree with Meryl about preparation now for the future is the key thing.
Okay, thank you. And I think actually the next question that we have follows on really well from that. One of the things that you've both alluded to are the targets in terms of 2050, 2030. Richard, would you like to just expand on this a bit more? And if I could just ask you, do you think businesses are doing enough?
Put simply, no, and it's very difficult. I think that whilst government has made a commitment for 2050, really the target for action is now, and it's really 2030, the next 10 years that the scientists are telling us is the time to make an impact. Actions after that time are still going to be worthwhile, but possibly a little late. And if you aside of your political colour, if we just listen to some of the people that have been involved with government at a high level, if we look at one of the parting comments of Mark Carney when he left his position as governor of the Bank of England, he was talking about, well, yes, it's important that government plays a role, but actually it's really only business and businesses that are going to have a real impact on making a change as far as climate's concerned. And there are some leaders that are coming forward. We are seeing Apple made an announcement this week that they're going to be they're aiming to be zero carbon by 2030, and they want to make the whole of their supply chain zero carbon by that time as well. really, you know, if they're at a particular point in the supply chain, well, that needs to go the other way to the consumer and beyond as well, really.
Well,
I also think that there's a danger that many businesses will leave it to others, you know, saying, oh, well, it's all down to big business to sort out rather than us. But we do actually need that large scale change. And I think that, you know, we do need some leadership and examples to be able to show people what to do and how to do it.
I think big businesses can often lead on that. So, for example, pension funds now have stewardship. Part of their corporate responsibilities around trying to engage consumers to think about, for example, where their investments are going to go, and then holding the investments to account for what they're investing in, and trying to make them greener. And the subject of this is green rather than sustainability, the sustainability goals in general. But for example, pension funds use stewardship organisations can use their pressure to look at how you have more diverse boards, including more women on boards, recognising that actually more gender diverse boards are more profitable, and they have a campaigning role to really bring in the sustainable supply chains into everything that their business is about. So I spoke to somebody from SAP who they provide software primarily to social enterprises, and they were saying that the pandemic has highlighted the weak links in supply chains ethically and sustainably. So, for example, when COVID was being spread through sweatshops in Leicester, people are thinking more about the recent example of a few weeks ago, why Leicester had an extended lockdown. People are thinking more and more about there is not enough transparency in supply chains. This is a real opportunity for small businesses because often they are part of larger scale supply chains, especially in Lincolnshire. And interestingly, Lincolnshire is one of the worst areas in terms of carbon emissions because of the industry we have. So there are quite a lot of opportunities for us to move these industries forward more. So I think it is a combination of it's bottom down, it's top down, bottom up, and also engaging consumers in terms of what do they want, finding out how to win new contracts from suppliers. Also, just in terms of Centre of Climate Change, they've written a letter to Boris Johnson recently, really campaigning for him to really integrate these principles into the Building Back Better, the green recovery. So it is quite dire in terms of what has to happen quite quickly. But I think this is business as unusual, and the world is changing very quick. The business world is changing very quickly and having to respond. So the opportunities for small business owners thinking about who might be listening to this is really to think, how can they harness green principles into their business now to win new work rather than focusing on how they had done work up until now. I think it's an exciting time myself. Urgent but exciting.
Absolutely. I think what we've covered so far has been a lot around the motivations, the scale of the challenge, how important it is, and I think that's been really useful. What I think it would be good to move on to now is thinking a bit more on a practical basis how businesses may begin to think about integrating sustainability into their practice. So and also some of the challenges around that. So I'd like to come back to Alexa and Richard, if that's okay, and just ask you about some of the key challenges that you personally within your businesses that you may have faced in the experience of setting up and running a sustainable business, and also how you overcome that.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I think it was Richard who mentioned a while ago about the value of doing things differently, and I fully agree with that. But for me, that's also been one of the biggest challenges, because you're doing something new, so there's no guidebook, there's no examples. You can't sort of say, oh, how did you do that, because you don't know anyone else who's doing it. And the challenge for me of working with reclaimed materials was a lot to do with the manufacturing process and making that work with a very wide variability in terms of the materials that I'm using. So for me, it's been about a lot of trial and error, a lot of determination to just keep going, and working hard to talk to a lot of people and find people to talk to who can shed a light on a little part of the process that's been difficult. Yeah, but I think the flip side of that is it brings resilience to the business, because you're used to adapting, you're used to having to consider and innovate and test out and experiment and things. So there are huge benefits that come with that, and I would attribute the longevity of my business almost directly to that, actually.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Alexa, and I think that, you know, I share a lot of those thoughts really, and I'd like to just come to this question from my own business and also a lot of the my customers as well, really. And I think that there's kind of, in this whole agenda, there's two key challenges really, I suppose, and one is actually understanding what you do at the moment, and actually, you know, getting a proper understanding of you know, what your carbon footprint is, what your financial costs are in running different aspects of your business is obviously something that isn't in the day-to-day minds of many directors of businesses. You know, how many people know how much you know, electricity or gas or oil that they might buy on a monthly basis? How does this change? What are the things that that are possible then to do about that? And I think that being armed with that knowledge is the first step to actually being able to make an improvement. You know, and so understanding your own picture and also understanding the possibilities. I was talking to one of the local hospital trusts recently, and they've been doing some work understanding about their fleet and trying to really get to grips with, well, what is it? What are the costs and the environmental impact of their current fleet of vans and cars and so forth? And then, well, what would be the impact if they move to cleaner fuels, and how that would all work practically? And there's a lot of work that goes into that sort of thing. And I think very often businesses are consumed with the day-to-day, and they don't necessarily have the time and sometimes the expertise to look at those issues. So I think those are the things really, sort of understanding what you do at the moment and its impact, understanding what the possibilities are, and actually getting some help with trying to bridge the two and coming up with some, you know, quite often really better business solutions as well as more sustainable solutions.
That's brilliant. Thank you both very much. We've had a comment come in on the live chat, so I'm just going to read that out if that's okay, because I think that this is a really useful question for us to consider. Probably in light, Richard, of what you were saying earlier around the you know, our business is doing enough question. So the question that we've got is from Howard, so thank you, Howard. Can the aggregated effect of individual businesses making changes to their work be sufficient to make the scale of difference we need, or do businesses need to start working together more to apply pressure to governments and society? So an excellent question, I'm sure you will all agree. Can anyone offer any thoughts on that?
I think this relates directly to what Richard was just saying about the need to learn quickly, and to me the greatest way that businesses can cooperate and benefit each other is to share learning, because as Meryl pointed out, we have to move incredibly quickly, we have to change incredibly quickly, and if we can work out how to do that together and share our successes and failures with other businesses, then we're going to get there sooner and more smoothly. So
the collaboration is key for you, Alexa.
I completely agree with everything Alexa's just said. I think particularly for the smaller businesses that I work with, They often don't have the time, the resources, the independent know-how to know how that you take on this challenge at their level or at any level. So collaboration, share learning, share knowledge, share experience is absolutely going to be key to tackling this, and tackling it quickly. As everyone said, there is no time to waste here. So, and also makes good business sense, particularly for those really small businesses that, you know, struggle to make profit or it's a real slog. Any efficiencies you can embed into your business, you know, an efficient business is often a cost-effective business, which is often an environmentally efficient business. So I think any learning that businesses can take from each other there is going to be helpful to the bottom line, but also to this wider goal.
Can I just come in there as well? I think there was a really interesting poll during the last general election that had nothing to do with the colour of the politics, and that was a poll about the importance of the climate emergency to people that were voting in the election. And this was a poll conducted by the BBC, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact figures, but there was basically, during the course of the election, a really fast rise in the perception of the general public about how important addressing the climate emergency is. And so I think that links quite neatly with what you were talking about, Meryl, really around the fact that a lot of the change will start to be driven by the consumer and by householders, and that will kind of flow through business. And actually, I think it will end up being something that will, as a result of that, become more important to the government. Although I have to say that I was quite disappointed in the statement, I think yesterday, that as part of the spending review, climate change and sustainability isn't one of the key issues in the planned comprehensive spending review.
Yeah, that's true. Howard, go back to Howard's point in terms of business collaborating. I think there are lots of networking groups, and I think that's where, for example, the Federation of Small Business has a very strong voice across the country, and so do a number of others like the Institute of Directors. Or it's worth getting together with other. I'm part of I run and I'm part of other networks that focus on ethical, sustainable business, and and we collaborate together to have a stronger voice, to get the right people listening to us and putting pressure. Yes, the time is really urgent, and especially in terms of energy, which is not my specialism, obviously that's Richard's. You know, we really have to be changing our habits really quickly, and the best way to do that is to engage with consumers. And it's been going on for what, 30 years? I remember doing this when I was doing my A-levels. Bit old now, and it's just people haven't responded as quickly and as deeply as they need to. So it's all very well to make small changes, but we have all got to make really big changes. Like at the moment, use less energy, turn lights off, put on jumpers. It's not very fashionable, but actually, if we all turn our heating down in our homes in winter, or and think about where we're getting our energy from, we need to have a much stronger approach. Consumerism is really it's a real problem for the environment in general. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that we have around 15 minutes left. And one of the things that we really wanted to do is think in practical terms, really, what may a business start to think about if they are maybe at the start of this journey, as we talked about earlier on. So what we've seen is that Alexa and Richard have businesses which clearly have sustainability at the core of them, and they've been built around that. But if I were a business owner and I was concerned about sustainability, see all of the reasons why it's makes good sense and is important, but I couldn't see maybe a natural link to my business and my operations, but I wanted to do more. Where would I start? What advice could you give me? And we might start to talk in this section around some of those networks and that support and collaboration that we've been alluding to.
Okay.
Yeah, can I start on that then, please, Claire? So I've already sort of said, well, one of the first steps is actually understanding what you do at the moment. But, there are some things out there that I think just aren't in the common knowledge and so forth. So, you know, I mentioned the Hospital Trust recently. Well, their calculations are proved as for example, the cost of the whole life cost of leasing small vans that are full electric as opposed to leasing diesel vans works out to be fairly cost neutral. Well, if that works for them, then that must work for other businesses. Some examples with things like solar PV, for example. There's 2 car dealerships on Outer Circle Road where solar panels are being installed, and there's a payback of less than 5 years on those. A naan bread factory in Nottinghamshire, payback less than 4 years. Some of these things are, yes, undoubtedly expensive, but they can have a good outcome in terms of a business's finances, as well as having a positive impact on climate change. You know, things like LED lighting, voltage optimization, insulation, alternative heating technologies, all of these things have quite a short payback period for an investment. Well, these things are very possible to do. You know, even simple things like remodeling some of our older buildings. You know, there's lots of the property stock out there that was designed not only years ago, but for previous occupiers. Well, if some of those are invested in to be more carbon and energy efficient, you know, then there's a positive impact on climate change. There is currently a grant still available to help businesses, and this is also a font of knowledge as well, of independent advice, other than talking to a business like mine. But there's the Smart Energy Greater Lincolnshire programme that offers advice and also financial support for capital investment for businesses in the whole of Greater Lincolnshire. And for anyone that is serious about looking at this agenda, then there is an immediate source of advice that is available. So that's the Smart Energy Greater Lincolnshire programme, and also there'll be more coming through the Climate Commission in Lincoln. I should probably shut up now and let someone else talk.
Thank you. Who would like to? Was that Katrina? Did you want to say something at that point?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, obviously, as Meryl had alluded to, so FSB, who I represent, so we have a UK-wide network of 165,000 businesses, all with mostly the same goals, which is to stay in business, help their businesses thrive, survive, and particularly at this current time, get through it. So obviously our network is always looking for new members and for people to join our lobbying as well. Like that central voice that we were talking about before. You know, smaller businesses are not on their own. They are not one lone reed voice trying to get out into the wider world. We are part of a much stronger, huge network of the small business community. I'd also recommend looking at things like the Society for the Environment and IEMA. So they are more professional bodies, but they do offer an awful lot of learning, guidance, documents, guides and events that help people get to grips with these issues in their business. Locally, obviously, we've got the Lincolnshire Climate Commission as well, so I'm sure we're going to see some really exciting things come out of there pretty quickly. So I'd really encourage people to tune into that in any way they can.
Yeah, I think the really clear message from this is around collaboration, isn't it, in terms of I would say cross networks, in terms of so the FSB does a lot of work. I run a network called the Good Business Network, but so I put up e-collaborators because it's gone beyond a network of businesses, it's gone into a network of consumer groups as well. So there are other organisations that you could. Firstly, I'd say anyone could contact me on LinkedIn. I'm Meryl Shirley, but there are links to other bigger organisations, and I would say just reach out is the thing to do. Social Enterprise UK have done a massive push to get businesses to commit to they run the Buy Social Challenge, which is to get businesses to incorporate social enterprises into their business supply chains. And then there's also another SAP runs something called Procurement with Purpose. So that, again, they're trying to get ethical, sustainable, businesses that think beyond profit, think about people and the planet into their supply chains. And and I've mentioned the business in the community, haven't I? But I would say reach out, find people who think like you and who want to just grab a coffee with you and look, maybe be open about business. Like, again, the pandemic's changed. People used to be very quiet about your business is good, and that's all they'd say. Now everyone's had to face new challenges, so there's a new level of openness about how are we doing it, how do we need to do things differently. So I'd say reach out to people, ask for contacts, ask for ideas if you haven't got them yourself. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
the pandemic has brought into focus. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say,
the pandemic's brought go.
Go on, Alexa.
Sorry, I was going to say I really agree with everything Meryl said about reaching out and talking and getting support from other people who are facing the same challenges. Just two more things I'd quickly add in terms of resources. If you're interested in looking into the idea of a circular economy, which is all about keeping materials and resources cycling through closed loop cycles within the economy rather than going into landfill and being lost. Looking at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is a really great repository of resources, case studies, learning materials, etc. So that's a really great place to learn more about that. If you are involved in making or designing products within your business, and you're either thinking about designing or adapting products that are more sustainable, you can look at Design Block, which is an arm of the design school at Lincoln University, and basically that's a place where you can access expertise around design and sustainability and manufacturing technology. So the site for that is designblock.co.uk.
I'm really sorry.
I'll pass over to you now. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. I was talking all over you. I do apologise. I think I was just going to just encapsulate what we've been talking about. That I think the pandemic has really brought into clear focus how much we all need each other to work together, to share experience, to share our frustrations, to share good practice. And I think the fact that we've all had to kind of distance and actually physically draw away from each other has really built even more of a strong desire for people to come together, to work together. And I think what we've also seen in the period is that how easy it is to do digitally. I don't think we're going to be seeing going forward lots of closed doors, lots of meetings in hotel venues where you have to be booked on, you have to be in the network. The doors are opening and the barriers, we hope, in terms of collaboration are going to come down, because we've seen during this period quite how much people need to stick together, whether that's for lobbying purposes, much of what we've been doing over this period to get support and guidance for small businesses. But what's been happening across the economy is that it's businesses wanting to come together to either share their voice, share experience, or just celebrate what they do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katrina. That's a really useful summary. Sorry, Meryl, did you want to just come in there?
I'm really sorry. I have talked a lot, so I don't mean to talk too much more. But just one of my passions, and I just forgot to mention it from my notes, was the circular economy is a real growth forward. And I think if anybody is thinking they want to start a sustainable business, I've started a circular economy club in Lincoln for Lincolnshire, but also I'm networking quite a lot with ones in other parts of the country. And it's so obvious if you look at the way forward for business and avoiding waste, but needing a good economy, is to look at circular economies. And some circular businesses aren't sustainable by virtue of what they do to expand nationally. And I know of a few who have circular businesses in other parts of the country that have linked into opportunities they've seen from government funding to do with waste, financial penalties around waste. And the person I spoke to, it's great. It's costing the businesses no more, but she's saving loads of, it's in the events industry. She's been saving loads of material from landfill and been able to generate income out of it. And so she's got a business and feel good and good for the planet out of it. It's the good way forward. So I think that's a challenge. And I would think that people who want to start circular businesses would do really well to get together. And I would love to speak to anyone who wants to start a circular business, because it's linking into opportunities that are there and we just don't see on our own. And businesses do go better through bouncing ideas off each other, which self-employed people don't always have the opportunity to do. So.
Thank you. So I'm conscious of time. We've got just a couple of minutes left before we need to hand back over to Tarzan. Is there anything that anybody would like to add that you haven't had a chance to say yet? Anybody on the panel? Everybody's quiet. Okay, well, brilliant. Okay, we do hope that that has been a useful session for you, those who have tuned in. I think my thanks to the panel. So thank you to Alexa, to Richard, to Meryl, and to Katrina. I think your input has been invaluable. And hopefully we've just set a bit of context around the importance of sustainability and some of the motivations towards embedding sustainability, as well as some of the challenges and the opportunities, and some practical ideas as well. So thank you all very much for joining me to the panel, and everybody that has tuned in. So Tarzan, can I hand back over to you?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Claire, Alexa, Meryl, Katrina, and Richard. Certainly a lot of food for thought throughout that discussion there, and one of the things that sort of stuck out for me particularly was sort of this whole win-win situation that was sort of coming out, really, in terms of business becoming more sort of efficient and sustainable, and sort of appealing to this sort of more ethical audience, who will be able to buy with peace of mind, basically, so I think that's a real opportunity there. So, but thank you very much for that, and I really just wanted to end this sort of broadcast and let our sort of audience out there know about sort of opportunities available, really, from the university, with regard to sort of consultancy, work placement, research opportunities as well. And yeah, so if you are sort of interested in sort of looking at any of these, please sort of contact me. Just scrolling along the bottom there is my sort of email address. So yeah, get in touch. That'd be great. But I'd like to say, yeah, great big thank you once again to Claire and panel, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.